to City and State TV. I'm Executive Editor Michael Johnson. I'm joined today by Linda B. Rosenthal, Assemblywoman from the Upper West Side, and also Alex Beauchamp, the Northeast Region Director from Food and Water Watch. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And I know that you have a bill that you're moving through the Assembly right now that would label genetically modified organisms, GMOs, as everyone generally calls them. Tell us a little bit about this bill and why you're pushing it.
Okay, well, in response to an overwhelming desire for people in the country, but also within New York State and within New York City, who want GMO processed labeled foods like that labeled. And this bill would mandate that all foods that are, or most foods that are created through genetically engineered processes would be labeled as such.
Great. And Alex, you can talk a little bit about the specifics of this and the science behind this. GMOs. Explain to our viewers who might not be aware of this. Like, what is GMOs? What are you buying at the supermarket that have GMOs in them?
Yeah, sure. So genetically engineered food has been genetically manipulated. So this is completely different from conventional breeding. It's not breeding, two plants together. It's taking a gene gun and going in the molecular level and changing the DNA. So we think this is a fundamentally different process. We know that consumers want to know the information. Up to 90% in several polls have said we want to know. We think Albany should give them the right, and we should let folks know what they're eating.
And I know that this movement comes as there's a bill in the federal government and Congress that would essentially say, that would preempt states and say, like, states cannot control the labeling standards for GMOs. It would be set on a national level. And this bill is considered by people who are opposed to the federal bill as like the dark bill, the deny Americans' right to know bill. Tell us a little bit about this movement, and is this your push to do this and to get this done this session in response to that movement that's happening at the federal level?
Well, I mean, the federal bill is paid for by Monsanto and all the other lobbyists. It's almost literally paid for through campaign contributions and other assistance that these corporations give to representatives in Congress. The issue about passing it through the states, of course it would be preferable on any issue to have a federal law that covers every state, but that's not possible now because of what I just said. So the strategy is to do it state by state, and so we've been trying for a couple of years to push this issue to the fore in the Assembly. And last year we got it through 2 committees, and then session ended. This year we're starting much earlier, and it's already gotten through the first committee, which is Consumer Affairs, and it's proceeding along. And that's what the voters want, and that's what our constituents want.
And as I was talking to Alex before the interview a little bit too, he said that Senator Laval is also a sponsor of this bill, so you have a Senate Republican as well, which gives it a little bit more of a chance to get passed. Is the sense that this is something that you just have to bring awareness to, that you think that for the most part this is something that would have support in Albany? Because I think the Farm Bureaus obviously had been opposed to this, and it says that this could lead to higher costs for a lot of consumers at the market.
Well, I mean, we have 70 sponsors right now, which it's bipartisan. People from both sides of the aisle support this, and that's because it's a consumer right to know measure. And, that's what people deserve, that. People get to know the ingredients in products, the number of calories, where it's produced, all sorts of things. They also want and should know if it's produced through genetic engineering.
And to the cost question, though, I guess I'll let Alex handle this one. What would you say to those arguments that this will lead to more regulation for these companies that will then be passed on to consumers?
Yeah, so we've heard a lot of sort of crazy stuff from the other side about how much this will cost, and really truly crazy sky is falling type arguments. And I think this is what happens when you pass good consumer legislation. This is what happened in the bottle bill. We passed it, the sky is still here, we're all still fine. The same thing will be true in GMO labeling. If you just take a minute to think about this, the only cost for the producers is changing a couple words on the label. We know that they change labels all the time. We know that this will not cost much money. In fact, Consumers Union, the advocacy arm of Consumer Reports, published a study that's less than a penny a day, $2 and something over the course of a year per person. And I think those numbers really make a lot of sense when you think all we're doing is adding a few words to a label. So it shouldn't cost much at all for the consumer.
You know what really costs a lot is the lobbyists that that the companies are paying for, and the amount of money they've poured into efforts to defeat proposals like this. And in Vermont, they're suing Vermont because they passed a GMO labeling bill. That costs a lot of money.
And I mean, from your point of view, the reason that they are opposed to this bill probably is because they're concerned that by bringing awareness to GMOs, it would impact their overall, their products and whether or not consumers would want to buy their products. They'd probably force them possibly to raise, to have more GMO-free products that might be more costly to them.
Well, I mean, across 62 countries, they either require labeling or do not accept genetically engineered foods. So why should we Americans have a different product than the ones over and across the world? If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. And the companies who make GMO cereal, for example, for the U.S., make non-GMO cereal across the world. They can do the same for us.
So how do you think this is going to play out this year? I know obviously you're very, very happy that it's moved through the Consumer Affairs Committee already. It goes to codes now.
Yes.
What would you say, is this something that you feel like needs to get done this year, or is there like a leveled measure of progress? If you can get it to the floor for a vote in the Assembly, would that be a successful year for you?
Well, Alex and other advocates are working tremendously hard with me to pass it as fast as we can. And some bills, for example, medical marijuana, took about 20 years to pass. So we do not want a future like that for this bill. We want to get it passed as soon as we have the votes, as soon as we're ready for it, and we always target doing it in the session we're in. So we'll be trying hard.
Well, that's right. I think you have the support in the Assembly, right? This is the kind of bill that if we get it to the floor, we're going to win. And so I think that that's the first step, right, is you pass it through the Assembly, and we're pushing really, really hard to make that happen this year.
And I know in the Senate, whenever you have a bill, it comes to the end of the session, you have the Assembly and the Senate, they get together, we throw all this legislation into what generally has been called the big ugly. Is there a sense of something that you can tie this to? Is there a way is there another measure that maybe the Senate would be supportive of that you feel like would help get this through?
I don't forecast that this bill would be part of a big ugly, because it's a substantial issue on its own that deserves its own attention and would be hard to link to others, I would think. We are going forward on the merits. And I know that Senator LaValle has carried this for a while, but he's expressed an avid interest in getting it through the finish line while he's still in Albany.
Great. Before I let you go, just really quickly, I wanted to get a sense of what the cost might be as far as enforcing something like this, because obviously, your bill calls for penalties if people mislabel things. Is there a sense that would require additional staffing, additional regulators, things like that?
So we think it's negligible, right? We think the fiscal note is completely negligible on this, and it's not the kind of thing, there's no testing, it's an entirely paper-based system, so the cost to the state should be almost nothing.
Well, Alex Beauchamp and Assemblywoman Linda Rosenthal, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.